In a shifting real estate market, it can be more challenging than ever to pinpoint an exact market value for any property. So what options are available to buyers or sellers if an appraisal comes back at less than contract price? Well, stick around because that's exactly the 5 options we'll be covering in this video. How you doing? It's Pete Deininger with the Breck Life Group at eXp Realty, and today we're going to take a look at the 5 options available to both buyers and sellers if an appraisal comes back at less than contract price once you're already under contract. So first, a little background. Interest rates, as we've discussed recently, have been on the rise, but the market is now more in a balance here in Summit County. So it's not a seller's market and it's not really a buyer's market. We've seen the market cool off some, inventory remains low, transactions are down, and it's kind of a more balanced market. Great opportunities for buyers. They can actually come to town and see a property instead of writing an offer sight unseen. And for sellers, if you price a property correctly, there are not a lot of other properties that buyers are looking at, so quite likely a well-positioned property will sell quickly. So let's talk about option number 1, and this one is primarily for sellers. Confer with your real estate agent before you go to market. Gone are the days of just hanging any price tag on a property and having it sell in one day with multiple offers. You really need to be able to look at recent sales and price your property strategically so that when buyers bring offers, you can feel confident that it is at a price that the appraiser will feel is market value. So that's option number 1, primarily for sellers, but buyers, you'll want to take a look at those exact same recent sales and make sure that you're not paying too much for a property. So it's really about finding that common ground between buyers and sellers. Option number 2, the appraisal report comes in, and take a look at the other comparable sales that are listed on the report. The appraiser is going to go through the MLS and take a look at what he or she feels are the most likely candidates that match up well with your property. But if they miss something, and I will tell you that the market is pretty warm in Summit County still, and so sometimes appraisers are so backed up that lenders are using out of area appraisers. That can mean that they don't have the same familiarity with our market, and they may be pulling comps or recent sales that aren't an exact match or as close as some others that your agent should have seen. So just make sure you look at the comparable sales. If something is amiss, if there's something that's out of a line and doesn't really match up well, and you can supply other recent sales within the same time period, you can supply those to the appraiser and ask them to revalue based on the new sales submissions. All right, number 3 on our list, and this is really an option available to both sellers and buyers. And what this is if an appraised value comes back less than contract price, and the buyer is able to bring some additional cash to the table and chooses to do so, the seller can ask the buyer if they are willing to bring additional cash to not adjust the sales price. If it's the perfect property and they feel that maybe 1 or 2 of the comps were a little bit off market, but we couldn't get the appraised value adjusted, a buyer may be willing to bring some additional money to the table to make up the shortage that the lender is not going to lend on the property. And in this case, we have seen many buyers, especially when inventory is so limited, we have seen buyers say, yes, we will do what's called appraisal gap coverage if the appraisal comes back up to $25,000 less than contract price. We will make up the difference between appraised value and contract price. We will bring that cash to the table and we'll get this property closed. All right, option number 4. if option number 3 is not available, if the buyer simply will not bring additional cash, perhaps they don't have the available funds to do so, or they feel that they were overpaying with their offer price, they may choose to try to stick with that appraised amount. And in this case, if you, the seller, if you have more motivation to get your property sold than you do to be patient and wait out the perfect buyer who's going to pay your price, then option number 4 here is to just go ahead and adjust the sales price to equal the appraised amount. And this way, the buyer, if they're getting a loan, can borrow the 80% that they plan to borrow. You'll be able to move forward and come to successful closing. And option number 5, and this is really the option that we don't like to pursue either for buyer or seller, because it means that the whole process starts over. Option number 5 is we agree to disagree and terminate the contract. The buyer does have the right in Colorado. They've got appraisal protection. If the appraised value comes back less than contract price, they do have the right to terminate the contract, petition for their earnest money back, and move on to find another property. If you're the seller, this means that you're starting all over again. We've got to fire up all the marketing engines and get your property out there in search of a new buyer, and that buyer may ask why the property went under contract and fell out of contract, in which case we are obligated to disclose that it was because the appraised value came back less than the contract price. So this is never our best option, and that's why I save it as option number 5. But just know that if the appraised amount comes back less than contract price, you, the seller, are not obligated to sell at that lower price. It just means that we're starting over. That wraps up the 5 options available to both buyers and sellers if an appraisal comes back at less than contract price. Now, as I said at the beginning, the Summit County real estate market is in transition. We are seeing a cooling in the market. We're seeing prices pulling back from peak highs, and so pricing your property strategically is of the utmost importance. If you're thinking about selling, give us a call. We would be happy to provide for you a free analysis of the value of your property today. Thanks, and we'll look forward to seeing you back here very soon.